This live presentation was produced in Ashland, Oregon by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. RVML relies on the support of our volunteers, members, and donors to organize and present these programs. For more information about this presentation, or to borrow, download, or purchase other recordings from our catalog, please visit our website at rvml.org.
Well, I'm really glad to be here. I'm a therapist and a teacher, and my intention tonight is really to bring forth the essence of the Enneagram. I don't want to be about convincing. I don't want to have to convince, or it's perfectly fine if it's not something that resonates with you. And I'm not going to go over the history. I'm not going to tell you where it comes from. You can read that in books. And so those are a few things I'm not going to do, which is how you start in the land of nine is what you're not doing. But what I'd like to do is transmit the essence and the intelligence of the Enneagram. And the only way to really explore this is to explore deeply. So if it doesn't catch you and hook you and draw you in, then it won't really affect your life. And that's my intention, is to share with people where their lives will be changed as a result. I'm just going to share briefly my own story, which is how I end up teaching, right? Everything in life, everything that profoundly moves oneself, and that generally affects the path in others. I was a part of a school of consciousness and love, and with a teacher and 30 students approximately. And I was a part of this for a decade. And we studied with Gurjieff, we studied the laws of the Enneagram. The Enneagram is not just personality styles. It's actually a symbol that incorporates universal laws, and I'm going to share a tiny bit about that tonight. People do study it for a lifetime, so I can't give you the whole scoop, but I'm going to share a bit about that. And in this school, we studied ourselves, we had exercises, we met together many times a week, we built a 90-foot greenhouse, we had our lives interconnected. It was a very powerful experience, and we all wanted to be conscious, and we all wanted to be love, right? That's our aim, and so we studied many teachings, blah, blah, blah. And we did this, working on ourselves diligently, and in year 7, of our being together, we invited a man to come in to teach us about the Enneagram personality. And none of us had ever known about the personality styles. In a single weekend, we were all shocked because none of our awareness, none of our observing, none of our trying to be deeper and work on ourselves, none of it gave us what this knowledge gave us. And I think because we worked on ourselves and had awareness and all those other pieces, instantly we got our own lands, and it had a very shocking effect. And for myself, it catapulted me into a journey of awakening, really. And so I'm always referring back to it. It's always deepening. It's been quite profound, the knowledge with awareness. It's like knowledge with awareness. Because I think originally the Enneagram was transmitted in schools. It really wasn't, people didn't read about types, if that makes sense. They didn't get concepts in their mind, which is the problem today. So many people read things and then start to type. And then they start to get all these ideas about themselves and others, and it becomes a very superficial kind of not a game, but just it just becomes something less profound than spiritual development. So at the current time, I'm a student of Diamond Heart, and I think they do the best teachings of the Enneagram because they don't teach it at all. They don't teach it at all. They basically, you live your life and you journey through your soul's experience, and they hold the Enneagram as the frame. So then you are invited to find your own truth about your own experience and what is motivating you, and where your fears are, and all of the deep and profound and most often unconscious motivations. So then I ended up going immediately and studied with Riso and Hudson and took their training, and then I ended up living in the same town with Tom Condon, who is a very wonderful teacher. For those of you who know some, he's not as famous as Riso and Hudson, but very wonderful. He lived in the town where I lived, and I worked with him, and the thing I remember saying to him is, I want to be you, because he was a therapist and he worked with people, and he really made a difference in the lives of by knowing the Enneagram personally and individually, and through people and the transformation of people. So I did. I ended up training in NLP and hypnosis and many other things, just like him, so that I would have the training, and became a therapist. And then over time, I ended up realizing I needed to go back to school to become a therapist, but I was already one, because this opened a whole path of working with people. So then I ended up training in a Jungian-based school and incorporating that, and it's been just profound, really. It's following. It's felt like the seeds from the inside working their way out, and also observing how I would learn something about the Enneagram, and there was a real part, and then there was sometimes I'd get an idea about something, and I'd follow the idea, and it never was authentic. So then I've learned to just deepen into the essence of my own being, and that's the journey. So I want to say that typing oneself and typing others, though you have to do it. I mean, so that's the irony, is until you find your land, it's hard to really work with it. So in a way you have to, I do liken it to lands versus types. So if you think on the earth, we have the land of China, and we have the land of India, right? And they're completely different, right? And yet all the beings in them are not the same. So we're not talking about limiting or boxing, if that makes sense. We're just talking about opening to understanding the psyche in which you live. Because it's very hard to do so. It's hard to see beyond it if you are it. So the Enneagram has the way of opening so that you can start to explore beyond your own filters, beyond your own frame. Okay, so I have a lot on the agenda, and I'm going to try to stay to it. I'd like to invite questions, but I'd also like to stay on track, and it might be that we don't get to everything, but we'll get to most of it. I mean, I have more than can be shared. So the first thing I wanted to do is share just a bit about the spiritual laws, because I think it breeds much respect. And that's the main thing you have to have, because in a way, why study the Enneagram? There's lots and lots of models, right? Why study the Enneagram? If it's not something really profound, if it's not really true, why study it? So in the spiritual laws, the Enneagram is comprised of three different, the Enneagram symbol is made up of a circle, which is represented this is based on Pythagorean geometry, Pythagorean mathematics. If you divide 1 divided by 1, you get the eternal number of 1, which is represented by the circle. And this is the law of union, or the law of eternity, or the law of oneness, where there isn't separation. It's timeless, no beginning, no end, and it's the underpinnings within reality is a kind of oneness and interconnectedness. And if you divide 1 divided by 2 is boring, 0.5 you get, it's like end, but we're looking for eternal numbers, and if you divide it by 3, you get 0.333, which is represented by the triangle. And the triangle in the laws is the law of being. And it's talking about 3 forces that are at work in any creation. So, because the Enneagram doesn't just talk about human beings. With the laws of the Enneagram, you can graph the creation of galaxies. You can understand how the making of a cake and then the building of a house, anything that comes from the level of an idea into form, or the level of form dissolving back into the eternal. That's what the Enneagram describes. So this law of being is comprised of three forces, and if you think about it, two forces leads to duality. You get yes, no. And when you have yes, no, you have no creativity. So you have to have three forces. In Christianity, you have the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, or however you frame that. In Eastern religions, you have the creator and the maintainer and the destroyer, those forces. And even in psychology, you have what's conscious and you have what's unconscious. But unless you have a transcendent function or something that has them meet, then you don't have transformation. You don't have creativity. You don't have livingness. So it takes three forces. And Gurjieff used to talk about it as active force and passive force, like active and receiving and then reconciling. And you can liken that to, sperm, egg, and union. I mean, on every level, it's three forces that are about creativity and about creation. So, three forces is represented by the triangle. And then if you divide, I'll do this, so like that, right? And then if you divide 1 divided by 7, you get the infinitely repeating series 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7. And you should go home and do this on your calculators because it's really fun. Because it's like really cool, mathematics. 1, and on the lines it goes 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1. Oh dear, I think that's going to be. So these are the numbers. Okay? So that's how, and this particular law, this is called the law of manifestation. And the law of manifestation has to do with how things unfold into form, and how things resolve back into the timeless. So, you can chart things in time, which goes like this, like the apparent world goes on the outside, but there's the inner movement in the Enneagram that teaches you how, and I'm not going to go into the whole thing tonight, but just the essence of it, it teaches you how the inner worlds work and how inner transformation takes place and what needs to happen next and when different influences need to come in. And if you don't have them, for example, if you don't crack the eggs in the pan, then you don't end up having the potential for a cake. And if the cake doesn't cook, there's just certain processes that have to take place in order for creation to happen. And that's what these spiritual laws describe. So the Oscar Ichazo was a man who saw how humanity was a manifestation of with the Enneagram, or how humanity itself had these sacred laws in it, and that the division of humanity into 9 different styles. Now they're not a pie, they're not like this, right? It's not separate, right? It's not like separate pieces of pie, right? It's that the whole of humanity, the whole of human psyche, it's interconnected and interrelated with different kinds of intelligence. Bless you. So that is the level that the Enneagram and the knowledge of the Enneagram teaches. Any questions about this? I'm going to go kind of fast through this because that's not I just want to give you a sense of it. I just want to intrigue you with the intelligence of it instead of, yes?
Are you saying then that all of the 9 areas coalesce into oneness, and this is how we see the universe? That's one question or observation. Mm-hmm. And another one is, do we move from one position? I know a little bit about it, but not a lot. From one position to another as we evolve towards spirit.
You know what I'll do? I'll answer it in the next page. I'm going to answer that question in the next page. Okay? So first of all, we are human beings, and so we all have a bit of all in us, and we all have wholeness in us, but every human being has a particular land that they come from. So if you're Italian, you're not Indian, you're not Chinese, you know. So every person has their own psyche and the land that they come from. And at the same time, the more that evolved we are as a human being, the more we have access to every land and the qualities of every we can move. We can respond authentically because we become less and less. We become less of a fixed thing and more of a responding agent, if that makes sense. But it's very important to know that each land has its own gifts. And so,
Kristen, did you come up with the use of the word land? I love that you're using land instead.
it's great, isn't it? Yeah, land. It's just like, whoo, you know? Yeah, because it's more like that.
Did you come up with that? Or
I don't know. I think I started to think of it that way, and so I just think of it that way. Yeah, I think it's much better because doesn't the word type make you go, you know, contract type? I'm not a type. You know, I mean, there's a contraction with type. Yeah, and then all the people in the land, they're not all the same, right? Right. Okay, so the whole point of the Enneagram is not about your type or your land. It's about development. It's about personal and spiritual development. So I wanted to talk next about the vertical dimension. This is the horizontal dimension where we have all the different names of the different styles and it's what most people think of, the personality and blah, blah, blah. But really, the vertical dimension is the whole point, because there is no better or worse type. Every type is equally valid and totally great. Like, I think of it as, you know, Jesus was way, way, way evolved too. You know, he has the personal heart, and that's the personal sense of love, like that. The Buddha, way, way, way evolved land of the mind, the vastness and intelligence and being of, you know, it's completely different, right? So there are different kinds of psyche, and the enlightened nature of each kind of psyche is going to give you a different enlightened being. So Don Riso is responsible for this work. I always want to remember to acknowledge all these teachers, because I learned so much from everything I teach. I've learned somewhere, you know, and I don't read many books, so though I have a bunch. So Don Riso's, I credit him with this, levels. And in the levels, there are 9 different levels. And there's a book that describes all 9 lands with all 9 levels, and it's so many words. But they talk about there being healthy, average, and unhealthy, okay? So in the healthy, we're not talking about happy in healthy. We're talking about presence. We're talking about a kind of quality of being that it has greater and vaster awareness. So I always think of awareness kind of going a little bit like this through the vertical place, because here the scope of awareness in health, you're able to be present with what is and able to respond, and that sometimes you know, sometimes it's not about happiness whatsoever. It's about being able to be fully real and authentic and who you are in a wider expanse. So then there's healthy, average, and most people are in the average range. And average is, you know, working with our egos, working with the issues of life, and, you know, where we get contracted, where we feel freer, blah, blah, blah. And then we have unhealthy. And in the unhealthy range, this is where, without our brothers and sisters, we can't really move. People who are more fixated and more, their awareness and everything is quite fixed, and they can't really evolve without help. So we always have to remember that. If we have freedom, then we have some responsibility in a sense, because that part of humanity. In the unhealthy levels, it's all violence. You're either killing someone else or yourself. I mean, or harming someone else or yourself. There's a lot of violence in humanity, a lot of unhealth that is in this place of more constricted awareness. But as we grow, we work with things and get wider awareness. I want to say that the purpose of the whole soul work that we do is taking what's called our point of magnetic center. They call it, it's magnetic center or the assemblage point, it's called in some teachings, and these are teachings by Gurjieff. It's the sense of who we are as a person, who we are as a self, our sense of self, and that place in us, if we win the lottery, or if we fall in love or whatever, we can experience great freedom and health, right? We can experience, like temporarily or transiently, we can experience this greater freedom by an outside event. Or if we lose, if our mother dies, if we go bankrupt, if something, have a divorce, we can also be catapulted into unhealth by an event, an external event. And all of this does not really affect our assemblage point, our magnetic center, our sense of ourself. Those are external influences, and it doesn't really say anything except that the external, we're having this experience or this experience based on the outside. And what's that? A bad hair day, right, exactly. And every range in between. But that would probably be more like here. You probably wouldn't be catapulted down or up. But anyway, just the external, right? The external, how it has the influence. And this work, the soul work that I'm inviting you all to, in the end, my vision, is to do, and the diamond heart work and all real soul work, is to have this center in ourself, this sense of ourself, have it evolve so that from here, it doesn't matter what happens on the outside. We ourselves are a different kind of human being. And when we win the lottery or fall in love, we go higher. And when we have then we're still affected because we're human. We're affected. But the sense of ourselves in inner work, we start to be a different person, which gives that range. First of all, I don't think outer events are as important as when the inner development is more developed. We're not as thrown, and then also we don't get thrown as far. So the purpose of the Enneagram is on a vertical dimension. Whatever land you're in, then you work in that land to evolve from your authentic being. Yes.
Can you explain what is the causative factors for these 9 different lands or orientations?
The causative factors. Well, why don't I go to the horizontal dimension next, which is on the next page, right? And kind of give you a sense of the issues and the energies and what's going on in a certain sort of way. The causative factors.
How do they?
Well, the real amazing piece, and you'll get a sense of it when I do when I go into the 9 different lands from their energies and issues and how it works together. You'll get a sense of it. But I guess the main thing to know is that it's not all that separate. When people think in typing, they think really boxy, and really every land is connected to many lands, and there's integration and there's growth and there's variation. So in a way, they're facets of humanity. My great passion soon, this facets of unity, this almas work with holy ideas and the highest level, that's where I want to head and begin the work of this kind of work. Because most people teach the Enneagram in a personality style, and you have to work with your personality. So I'm not saying, but when you get down to the essence of it, then different human beings have different potentials, and so it's more like that. It's more like we all have everything in us, but we're just. I guess the lands is the better. I can't tell you why it is, if that's the question. Why the 9? Is that what your question is, really? The causative factors?
Well, a little bit of it is why, but more, I think, specifically is how they come into existence, that there are these differences.
Yeah, so I think it'll help when I go into the 9 places and then ask again.
Because one point of view, they could just be a creation of our mental process.
See, that's the
all up in our mind.
See, that's what actually happens with people when they read books. I have had more experience. I'm a therapist, and so I work with people, and I get to know how this all works on the inside. And people come in and they have concepts about who they are. They have like mental concepts, and then sometimes I'm really confused because it's not what I'm seeing. They get ideas, and that it is a problem with this whole thing is that people get ideas about it. And what we want to do is stay close to your own experience, close to your own soul, and then see what fits and doesn't fit for you. It's the journey of that.
You said it's not what you're seeing, though. Aren't you seeing your own perception?
Well, I didn't see any of it when I learned the Enneagram. I didn't see what
you're saying
yeah.
You didn't see any
It's the
of
filter that you perceive through, so you can't see it. You know, it's like the nature of it, and that's why it's so surprising and shocking. It's just also like each of us have a blind spot. Everybody has a blind spot that they can't see themselves, and the Enneagram goes, and it points specifically to that thing, and then you start to go, oh my God, I'm doing that, and I never saw it before.
No, I'm talking about when you were talking about your clients coming in,
Mm-hmm.
and them thinking they perceive themselves in a certain way.
Right.
And you're seeing
It's a very
them
tricky
in a
deal.
different way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the way
You have to
they're
work with that.
But,
Yeah.
but I'm saying that how you see them is also a projection. It's also
No, because I'm noticing that what's going on, for example, I'm noticing that what's going on here is fear. You know, honey, you know, I can see that this person is having fear.
and they're not aware of it.
And they're identified no, they're not aware of it. No. And so, but it's gentle. It's gentle. The other really, really amazing thing about the Enneagram, it's only found in awareness. You cannot find it in concepts. And so it's how you do what you do. And if you can get the judge out, you know, the part that has something to say about everything, and just become aware of, oh my God, I'm doing that. You know, and that's it. Enneagram's found in awareness. So I don't want to get too off because I won't be able to keep on track with time. But the vertical dimension is the most important, and it's all about soul evolution. And my envisioning is that people who want to understand each other and have kind of a conscious community and work the different pieces with each other and learn and grow our compassion and grow our understanding. Because one of the things about the Enneagram, when you get your own land and you see how you have no choice about it, like no choice, in a certain way you just don't, then you can't, it makes your heart soften for all the people who do what they do that you think, how in the world could they do that? You know, and then you realize, oh, they do that because like they're fixated, or you know, and you don't even have to say it in your mind. You don't really say it in your mind. You just go, oh yeah, we're all in the same boat. And if I can't, you know, just make myself this way, nobody can do it either, you know. So it grows compassion, it grows understanding, it grows relationships more deeply. There's wider, vaster ways of acceptance, if that makes sense. So it's a very powerful and humbling experience, this Enneagram. So the next thing I want to do is I am going to go, I hope to finish this before the break, is to go around and talk about the 9 different styles from a certain point of view. And what I want to do is I want to point out the energies and also the issues, and show you how the intelligence of how it's interconnected. Okay? So, all right. I want to make sure I did everything. So, I forgot to do the meditation. Well, I guess we'll do the meditation later. Okay. I did that. Okay. Can everybody see somewhat? I know that, okay. So first of all, the Enneagram is based on, as human beings, we have 3 centers of intelligence. How many people know something about this? How many people? So lots of people came who are really into the Enneagram. This is good. Okay. So 3 centers of intelligence. We have a belly center, and this is the instinctive way in which our magnificent bodies know how to work, and they support us, and there's an intelligence in our body, and that's belly-centered intelligence. There's a kind of presence there. And then we have a heart center, and then we have a mind center. 3 different kinds of intelligences. And the 9 types are divided into 3 types within each. So we're going to start at the top, and with the belly-centered intelligence. Now, the issue here is self-forgetting. That's the primary issue. Of course, it's the primary issue for everybody, but it's the primary issue because the center of the belly center is all about the ground of being. So it's our support, it's our instinct, and the energy here is either resistance. I'm going to use a different color. Red. I'll use red for energy. So the energy here is either resistance or anger. And if you think about it, it has to do with bodies are separate. How do we know we're us? Because, I'm separate from you. It has to do with boundaries, has to do with autonomy, has to do with a kind of resistance and a kind of, but a presence and a ground. So one thing I want to say, just to point out, they're in the triangle of the Enneagram, these 3, 6, and 9. These are called primary types. And the thing about the primary types is that what they do is they deny the energy. They deny. So that's how they are what they are. So, for example, the 9, it's about having a kind of energy of resistance or anger and having issues. And instead of acknowledging that, they're the center of the intelligence of this instinctual belly intelligence. Instead of actually acknowledging that, they deny it, and they say, oh, everything's fine. Well, what do you want? So the 9s are peacemakers, and the personality of a 9 is to go with the flow and to be with other people and do what they want and make no trouble, just kind of, they're the peacemakers. And on one level, that sounds like a really good thing, but it's really based in a kind of complete denial of their own, of who they are, and doing the developmental work of being an individual human being, if that makes sense. So in service of peace, they deny this anger, which then the denial of the instinct, the denial of the anger and all of that, it tends to erupt. They are always working. They want to be unaffected. They want, but they're not really developing themselves. And the avoidance of conflict and the forgetting themselves because it's too much trouble. They realize, like, if they are themselves, then that would be a trouble to people. Like, people would be, they would have to deal with them, and they go, what's the point? So it's very sad if you are 9. Like, people want to be 9s because they do have a kind of easygoing nature, they're easy to be around, blah, 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 but it's mostly because they haven't valued themselves, if that makes sense. They haven't made themselves important enough to have a conflict, or it's hard to describe every facet of it, but that's the essence of it. They make peace instead of developing. They make peace instead of being somebody. Does that make sense?
They're also really ungrounded, aren't they?
It depends. If you get there's a whole nother level, but the instincts have to do with that. A lot of 9s are very grounded. You can hardly get them to budge. It just depends. It just depends. So it just depends. There's subtypes, and that's really, really important. I'll talk about that a little bit. I'll point to it later. So denial is the thing that happens in the primary places. Center of the instinctive intelligence, deny it, and become a peacemaker. which is nobody, be nobody. Okay, then the same resistance, anger, and self-forgetting, same issues, overexpressed. So there's one style that denies, one style that overexpresses, and one style that underexpresses, okay? And what we have here is we have the boss, leader, challenger. There's all kinds of different teachers give different names. Now this is the type 8. It's a leader kind of personality, and it's somebody that's completely free with their anger. They express it, no problem. Their energy goes out, anger, resistance, control. They're good with power. They're good with this energy. They're good with it. The only problem is they forget themselves. They forget the tender side of themselves. It all becomes about in service of control and power, and they forget the tender, soft side. And so that is the self-forgetting that goes on in the land of 8. Leader, boss, challenger. And it's very simplistic. I want to say all of this is very simplistic. I'm just trying to give you the essence of how it works in an intelligence way, or an essence of it. So they are overexpressed, or the energy is overexpressed here and denied. And then in the land of 1, it's the perfectionist. And then what happens here is you take that same energy of resistance or anger and you pull it inside. In a 1, they turn it against themselves, and they kind of push. They're forgetting themselves on a personal level, and instead they align with principles, the right way something should be. It's a little bit of a sacrificial, but so the turning of it in, and the judgments that come, and the anger that gets repressed and that gets turned inward. You end up with a perfectionist, somebody who demands perfection of themselves. First of all, they've got very big inner critics, very, very, very hard on themselves, but then also hard on others. The principle is what matters. So it's a forgetting of the personal self in favor of principles. Make sense? So all of these are, so the personality, the way that it manifests, all of these are somewhat distorted. These are all based in the belly center of the intelligence, but they're working with it. They don't have it. It's like the path is to work with it and integrate it and then get freer. So the 9 learns to make value oneself and become important, and by God, I can do it. It's more like that. And then 8s, they get tender. They get to know their soft side, and they become tender-hearted and in themselves, and learn to move into a sense like weakness is okay. You don't always have to be strong in every single moment of existence. And then 1s, it's the personal sense with themselves, having some compassion for themselves, and then letting things loosen. Instead of the tight, it gets looser. So the path of evolution happens. Okay, so I'm going to move to the heart center. And so remember, the belly center is about the grounded being, and the heart center, you start to open to the question, who am I? That's the issue here. Who am I? Is, what did I use for issues? Energies, issues. Well, I use black. Okay, so this is about who am I? And the heart is what answers that question for humanity. Who am I? Really, your heart is what tells the truth about it. So all 2, 3, and 4, these are all about exploring. They don't have the answers. They're in the heart triad because they're working on it. They're working on trying to understand this. So the energy here, and this is a little bit tricky to understand, but the energy is one of shame. The deepest energy is one of shame. And the issues here have to do with roles, and they have to do with image, roles, and image and identity, okay? Because the question is identity, who am I? And the way that all three of these guys, these lands, answer is they, in the land of 3, they're identifying who they are with what they do. So remember, 3 would be the denial of the heart center, the denial of feelings, and getting really oriented toward tasks and goals. Okay? Tasks and goals and doing. So that's how it works. This land of 3 is the denial of the heart on one level and getting busy getting things done. So, and that putting aside the feelings to serve the where you're headed, to serve the goal. So, so then the over-identification with feelings, so we're talking about heart center and feelings. So the denial is the 3, and then in the land of 2, there's more of a over-identification with being the one who is the helper-giver person, that being the, and this is actually a performer. Am I losing anybody? Okay, good. Okay, it's a different way of looking at it. So this is a performer, a motivator, and the focus is on the tasks and goals, and the denial of feelings in service of that. And in the 2, you've got the overexpression of feelings in helping and giving, and in being identified as the one who helps and gives. So the way shame works in all 3 places is that it's the identity. The 3 knows that they are not all this achievement. They are not that. I mean, it's almost like they keep achieving, to be somebody, but really they know, like, if anybody knew that underneath all this, that's just me, So there's a deep level of shame that's unconscious. Mostly these things are unconscious in people, in a sense, so that they're not aware. They're identified on the outside as being successful in image, or, being successful in achieving and high achieving, blah, blah, blah. And the same with the helper-giver. They're identified as being the helper-giver, the one that knows best what you need and can answer your every wish before you know it, and like that. So there's an identity piece, but they know that it doesn't really work that way because they're really not Jesus. I mean, if people don't give back something, they get mad, and you can tell by resentment. You can tell by what happens. You know that it's not for real. So that's where the shame piece, it underlies all these lands. They're answering the question, who am I, based on what they're doing, or based on what their role or their function, if that makes sense.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Don't the people up in 8, 9, and 1, don't they want to know who they are?
Everybody has all 3. Everybody has all 3 intelligences. We all have thinking, we all have feeling, and we all have a belly center. But it's just that the issues that are being worked on are different. So the primary issues, like I'm saying, the 9 different lands and 9 different kinds of, where you find yourself, it's just different. It's just different. Like, I don't identify. I'm not identified with what I do necessarily. So, but people are. So different people have different orientations, and so it's just for every person to find what fits for them, because we all have all 3.
Yeah, but like the person who does with this doing, it's not the doing that's important, it's where you come from.
Right.
With the doing.
Right,
That's
exactly.
Who you are
Exactly.
Is the doer, not the doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it's just they have these panels. Helen Palmer, she's a famous teacher, and she runs panels and things, and there's this guy that I just remember on a panel. They had a football player, and he was a 3, and he just talked about the goal, the goal. And it's like, well, what about your feelings? What feelings? I mean, it's and they're there, but it's just not important. It's just off the radar because it's the goal. And see, other people look at that and go, "Wow, that's just nuts," or whatever. But but in that land, that's the way it operates. So in order to have more freedom, that's why we're teaching. That's why I'm teaching. The whole point is to have more freedom with all these things, so that no place is more fixed than any other place.
And
Yeah.
it's like one has to go deep within to really make progress. I mean,
That's right. On anywhere, they have to go deep within. It's true. Totally true.
So
Okay.
is each land like basically a state of unconsciousness?
No, because see, every land also has high evolved beings come from all the lands too. So it's the level of development.
But then as you develop, you're becoming more and more conscious.
You are
You're becoming less and less
fixed.
fixed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But the gifts of every land will be different. So the gifts, they come, So that's the beauty. And then we need all the different gifts and the facets of we can't all be the same. So we're working to have every person and every being be their most evolved self. But we sort of have to get real. The Enneagram, what it does is it helps us to get real with the part that we don't really, the unconscious, the blind spot, the more unconscious part. It helps with that so that we can grow and be more real. Okay, so did you flash that? Okay. Thanks. So then in the land of 4, just as this is overexpressed feeling, lands of 4, it's an underexpressed. It's a way in which it's the tragic romantic, and the tragic romantic or the individualist, the other teachers say different names for different ones, tragic romantic, individualist. They take feelings and they identify with the feelings themselves. Individualist. They identify with the feelings themselves, and they identify with the feeling of shame, actually, itself, in the land of 4. That's the deepest truth. And it's like an underexpressed but great, vast feeling is the experience in the land of 4. And the tragic romantic comes out of that. And a lot of, it can be channeled for creativity. There's so many, I always think of Joni Mitchell. Oh man, what a 4, and her evolution. And so lots of creativity and lots of depth, but also this over-identification with shame and over-identification with feeling. That's what they're working on. And so all of them, so any questions about how that particular thing works it's simple on one level. It's simple to look at it in this way, or at least I think so. It helps to find. So, and then we move to the head types. So again, we all have all 3 intelligences, but this is going to be, head types are thinking people, and the primary energy is that of fear. And if you think about it, thoughts are kind of fear. If you were just where you were, you would just be where you were. Thinking is all about, kind of preparing for what might happen, and so the energy is fear, and then we have thinking, and we have, which is good. Everybody, we need to think and learn and have strategies and plan, and it's all about there's strategies in this are in the issues here. There's security, and there's a sense of guidance. Those are the things that head types tend to, those are the issues. So they're seeking security, they're seeking safety, because and the thought is the way, in the land of 6, which is the center again of the intelligence of humanity in a mental, in a mind way, in this mind way. the 6 denies. I mean, I have so many people in my life who are 6s, and they're brilliant. They have clear perception, like the gift in the land of 6 is the center of humanity's intelligence on this level, like perceiving and truth and blah, blah, blah. But they get so clouded with doing this other thinking thing, the planning and preparing and trying to see what it might happen and how we can make it, not happen, and how we can be prepared for this, and what, it's a hypervigilance in the mind that isn't the mind, because the mind itself is clear and perceiving and open. And do you see the difference between like the real mind, the real heart, and the real belly versus the distortions of heart, mind, and belly? See, that's what we're talking about here. We want to acknowledge the intelligence of the real deal, and then talk about how 6s, they fear outside and they fear the inside. They have fears and doubts in themselves, and then they have fears and doubts about the world. So they're always working with the actual mechanism of their mind to, be safe. And they're looking for, usually 6s are quite complex. They're the loyal skeptic. Always there is some kind of issues with authority because, and they're questioner also. There are many names. Different teachers have different names. But a 6 will look for who's in power, and if that person is a good leader, they're loyal, hardworking, behind them all the way, just really a good, supportive, loyal. But if the use of power is off, they can't stand it, because in a way they project onto the authority their own power, and the need is for them to come bring that back, find their own truth, stand in their own truth, and have their own courage, and that's the work for a 6. But issues with authority and power in this way are often up, and they question lots. For example, like if anywhere are any 6s in the room, and they didn't know me, they would want to know about me. It would not be face value. They do not buy image. They do not buy anything on a flyer. They don't buy anything. It's got to be, I wonder what she does. I wonder how she lives, because I'm the person in the room with authority in the moment, and they want for real. That's the thing. They have like a buzzer for real. They want authenticity, and they want for real, and they don't want, they often have trouble with 3s because, this is all about the image and how it looks, and, like that, and this is all about some level of clear perceiving. It's the clear perceiving mind. So there's always the questioning there, and there's and doubting and inner and outer fears. That makes sense, and that's what clouds the 6 from being Krishnamurti.
You said that 6s would have difficulty with 3s, but isn't in Enneagram, when you're a 6, doesn't like the 9 energy and the 3 energy, isn't that part of the subtype thing?
It's not a part of the subtype thing. It is part of the connection. Actually, if you're a 3, a 6, or a 9, you're all of them, because just because the way the triangle works, every type is connected to 2 types.
Okay, and
yeah.
Yet you said that there's like this conflict with the 6 and the 3 because
no, it's just yeah, there are so many things to say about that. I'm not even going to open that one, because the depth of the Enneagram and exploring these connections and all the rest of it. But just the comment being that a 6 will really not buy image, and they don't. They're just not. They're into another level. So then we have 5, which is the thinker or observer, and the thinker or observer is it's the overexpression of thinking. So a 5 trusts their mind, and that's about it. I mean, they trust their ability to figure out reality, their ability to get what they need, or have information, get what they need, think. They trust their inner world, and they don't trust the outer. So the fear is really about the fears on the outside and expansion on the inside of their minds. That's how 5s, that's kind of the essence of how it works. So they think and know and gather and hoard in a way that the mind, in a sense. So it's an overexpression of thinking. And in the land of 7, which is the epicure or the generalist, the enthusiast, they have many titles. Then you have an underexpressed thinking. They're using the mind to move into every next experience, every next pleasure. The strategy is planning for pleasure and planning for experience and planning to go to the next thing that's even better and even better and even better. And that chocolate's good, but the next one I have. And it's like moving, using the mind to move experience, because the inside world is what's scary for a 7. They have the experience, they go so quickly that when they slow down and go in, often it's painful. Something is painful, and they're avoiding the inner pain by moving into the glorious world of every next experience. That makes sense. So
Thinking, their plans.
they're planning. Yeah.
Not thought out.
No, yeah, depending on level. Like the levels, because St. Francis was an evolved 7. So like that. So can't say anything about any land that it's better or worse. It's all about the level of the land, because you have evolved and then not so. So yes.
So you made a couple of references to the evolved beings, Jesus being 2.
Yeah, you're gonna ask me.
Do you know them all?
I could look them up. I have my cheat sheet. Well, one is kind of a Gandhi figure. I mean, and I'm not, I think there's different levels, I don't know if the Buddha's more, seem maybe a little more evolved than Gandhi, but who knows? I mean, I don't really, so I don't have and actually I think on that thing, I think that it doesn't go into 9 levels. I think it goes whooshoo up like that, But after your 9 levels, then I don't even want to talk about it. So, but yeah, there's everyone would have there are evolved beings for everyone. I can look it up. I think of Krishnamurti, Everybody know the story of Krishnamurti on the day of his inauguration to become the great guru of the Theosophical Society, and he's groomed for this whole thing. He stands up and he basically says to the crowds, truth is a pathless land, you're on your own. Because he could see in his clear thinking, he could see, or clear mind, he perceived the trap of the guru.
What about the 5?
I don't know. I can't think of them all. 5's probably, I think Einstein might have been a 9. I'm not, I can look it up, but I don't know them all just like that. So yes.
Where does the fear come from?
Well, the fear comes from the mind. The mind.
Why is the mind affected?
Because the ground in the body, and then knowing oneself in the heart, and then actually, I forgot the question here is, what do I do? This is who am I? My ground of being, who am I, and what do I do? And then the mind, if the mind is clear and perceiving, then it would just simply be supportive of the body and the heart and the mind. They would be all aligned, and that's where we're all headed, right? But a mind that fear, when we have painful experience, then we want to prevent that painful experience. And so we get a mind that thinks, trying to, that happened, then how can I prevent it? And then I try for strategies, and then I try for better strategies to get me where, it's the mind is trying to both prepare. On the one hand, it makes sense, right? Prepare for what might happen, right? On one hand. On the other hand, so it's very useful, but it just depends on the motivation.
They don't trust themselves, basically.
Well, all of us have minds, and all of us are kind of caught in fears at times. So, but yeah.
So the only way to deal with all of this would to really be to stand in your own being and really be in touch with who you are and stay there and come from that place.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Let's do that.
Again, I ask the question, what causes these
these 9 differences?
Okay. I think we're going to take a little break.
I don't necessarily need the answer right now,
Right.
but I raised the question so people
Yeah.
can contemplate
Yeah.
each other.
I think that, in every level of cause, who has any answers on the level of cause? Just our journey. I'm going to start by sharing a little bit about the form. Did everybody get one of these forms, the interest ones? Because part of my work and what I envision is I'd like to develop 2 groups. And I've taught the Enneagram in classes and done many things over the years, but I'm interested in what would happen to have community, like conscious community. So I realized that there would need to be 2 levels. I'm going to hope close the door. There'd need to be 2 levels. One would be a beginning level, and that would be more content oriented, and it would be more about people getting in touch with their style and how it works and what, applied. And then the second would be for people who really are already familiar with the Enneagram and want conscious community, want to really understand people and each other and to deepen through a kind of shared intention, really. And what would it be like to have creative conscious community? That process itself really intrigues me. So then the data would be like little pieces, but pieces you won't find anywhere. I've had amazing training, and I'll go over that when I go through the soul structure. Just pieces that aren't in books that are very powerful to work with, and that are awakening and deepening for people who are already familiar with how the styles work. Mostly working from the inside out. That's my wish, is that to work from the inside out and to see what happens. So I have all these things because I'm interested in the Enneagram and creativity. We, could explore the Enneagram in dreams. Because I'm interested in the 9 different psyches and their gifts and the potentials of what's possible here, to deepen in and through and together also, the connections together. So,
By the way, Einstein is a 5.
is he a 5? He might be a 5. Yeah, he's a 5. Yeah, of course he's a 5. He's a mind person, right? So the things that I offer, I do, even though I have it in quotes, typing consultations, because I really know people, and people who have a hard time finding their land, they can work with me, and in that way I really get people from the inside, had lots of experience, and kind of can be a real help and guide in that way. Because the one thing you do need to know if you work with the Enneagram is the land. If you don't have that, then you're not able to really work it in a deep and wide way. So, and then again, this idea of having a beginning group and then a more advanced group. And in the fall, if there's enough interest and enough people who could volunteer, I'd like to have panels, Enneagram panels. That's a way for people to know. Are people all familiar with panels? It's where you have like 3 or 4 people, 4 or 5 people that are all know their style, and then they work with me. I'm the facilitator. I ask questions, and that's all I have to do. They basically answer the questions, and the whole structure of the land comes through. Because the energy of it, the orientation of it, the reality of it, that just it ends up being a very good way to find where you are. So that's another very good thing. So I'm interested in that. I don't know if there's enough people in Ashland, because I'd need people for the panels. So if you are interested, if you know the Enneagram, if you know people, please leave one of these sheets, so that I can contact you and make that happen if it happens. The other thing that I offer it's counseling, both individual and relationship. And knowing the Enneagram, it's a very big advantage, because you are many years down the road in understanding what's objectively helpful for people. And I don't ever talk Enneagram ever in a session. It's just not. But knowing you're always working with somebody and their soul, their life, their like that. whatever's happening. You're not talking about the Enneagram. I mean, it's completely irrelevant, but it does allow me to be objectively helpful, if that makes sense. Like I know, well, you have enough of that. you don't need to, help people anymore or whatever, it goes like that. It's just so obvious. Things that by understanding the temperament, by understanding the land, I know where development would go, the direction. So I can be a helpful guide.
I like your card.
Thank you. So it's also helpful in relationships, helpful with kids, helpful. So it's not my only tool. There's many. I work with trauma and EMDR and all kinds of things, but it's one that I think is extraordinarily powerfully helpful. So, and then again, dream work. If in dreams and art and expressive things could happen and the Enneagram would blossom in that way, I'm very interested in the expressions of the different lands in that. So, my orientation, the next piece, I'm a student of the Diamond Heart. I think I might have mentioned that. And with Almas, who I find he's just absolutely brilliant. He's actually at the moment exploring the instincts in the school at large. And that's the other piece that's profoundly helpful. I mean, type is one thing in finding your land, and then the next to it, equal in power, are the subtypes, which are the instinctual variants, because that is hands down, our instincts are what run us. So what I wanted to do is just briefly go through what I see as some of the pieces that are in the Diamond Heart and in the structure of the soul, and then address it from Enneagram. Like, this is where this fits, and this is where this fits, and this is where this fits, if that makes sense. And the aim is soul development. The aim, or is soul freedom, or however, the aim is spiritual and soul development. So, and in a way, you can look at that like we just keep getting more out of the way, and then higher energies and higher spiritual qualities just manifest. That would happen naturally, like that. You can look at it like that. But sometimes there's also the need to actually work, make efforts, and make development where there isn't. So the Enneagram points to that too. Okay, so I'll say a couple of things. I made this. This is not from a book or anything. It actually was given, I got it with a teacher, from another teacher, but I think it was not from Almas, but I think it's very helpful in putting things together. So we're born, and when we're born as essence, and essence within instinct. So we have our bodies, which is completely, if you look at babies, that's what's so beautiful about babies, is they're just essence, open, all the qualities of anything, every potential is there, and then their instinct, their bodies, move toward pleasure, move away from pain, instinct and essence, that's what babies are. By the age of maybe 3 or 4, there starts to be an identification with one's own body, and that's the time when the soul child, the one in us that, I'm the one that wants. I mean, there's a whole bunch to say about all the development from babies. I mean, I'm not going to do all that, but in the soul child place, that's the place in us that has the I want. And soul children, they have the soul child in us, it has a expectation of immediate gratification for anything that we might want, and that we're the center of the world, and everything should go our way. I mean, we're little heathens, really. Like, as little beings, it's both wonderful to want everything and to be in the totality of our experience without thought, in a way. If you watch kids, they're completely and totally whatever they are. If they're curious, they're completely curious. That's all they're doing is being, watching ants. Or if they're angry, they're just completely angry and nothing else exists but that. And if they're happy, they're completely, it's the totality of experience. And we miss that. I think as human beings, we end up longing for the totality of experience that children have. Now, they're not evolved, right? They their brains aren't there, blah, 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 but their being is there in the totality of experience. And what happens is we get conditioned away from it because, as you know, if you have kids or work with kids, you can't have kids. you have to train them. No, share with your sister. No, no, not that. Don't touch, blah, 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 blah. I mean, the whole conditioning experience is to contract this little totality, soul child, wanting, experiencing being in a way. So all of us have had that experience and been a part of that experience. And what happens in so we move from our essence, we have our instinct, we have our soul child, and the personality starts to cover it all, if that makes sense. The personality are all the things in us that we say I to. This is what I am, and this is what I'm not. This is me at work. This is me in relationship. This is me here. This is me there. Everything that we identify with are, and Gurjieff used to talk about this, thousands of I's that we have because we're not one. Just put us in another situation where somebody else, I mean, personality is adaptive, it's conditioned, it's very skillful in some ways and not very skillful in others. But all of this kind of, it's a layer that surrounds deeper levels to our soul, if that makes sense. And at the outside, and even all the way through, we interject from, as the voices that I was talking about, the conditioning voices, not that, share with your sister, yeah, no, can't, blah, blah. All the limiting, critical, and parental voices that may not have been our parents. I mean, we take whatever our parents taught us, and then we make our own. And sometimes it's much meaner, than our parents were, and sometimes it has its own flavor. Who knows? But the superego is the voice that I think of as being, it's always trying to correct. There's just no winning with the superego. If you do it this way, you should have done it that way, and if you didn't do it, you shouldn't have done it. And if you did do it, you shouldn't have. I mean, it's a kind of contracting voice in the mind that keeps us small, keeps us keeps us in a familiar sense of ourself, if that makes sense. And if we try to step out and expand, it has a lot to say about. It has a lot to say. It doesn't want, in a way, it's trying to keep us safe by keeping everything familiar, no matter how unskillful. But so the superego voice is something that we always have to work with whenever we do personal growth work, because it has an anxiety to it. Every time we're growing, we can feel anxious. It's not familiar. So it has this, you have to become familiar with it to be able to just work with it. Sometimes it's defending against it in some way, seeing it for what it is, anyway, there's many ways to work with it. But just that and the personality, these two things are a part of the soul work that allow more of the inner aliveness. So what we want, the aim of the work is to capture our aliveness, like every ounce of our total aliveness, and yet not act out. Does that make sense? So, because we want the juice, but we also need our maturity. But so many times we're not even in touch with the juice because there's so much around it. And in Gurjieff's work, he always he made it simple. It was essence and personality, and that basically we want to feed the personality to our essence, like food, through soul work. We want to, and then we want the essence to just grow, so that it becomes more and more of who we really are. And all this other stuff is just food, like a good Thanksgiving meal for our essence to become more realized. So that's the very short version of the structure of the soul. But what I wanted to talk about was the way that the teachings would interface with this and what it might look like in terms of group work or in terms of integrating, how would that work? Well, the holy ideas are here. The holy ideas are at the essence. And just, if you think of essence like an acorn, an acorn is the seed from which the entire oak tree, it already exists. It just needs the conditions. It needs conditions and time and, needs light and ground and these things to help it grow into its full potential. But the holy ideas speak to the essence of each of the 9 lands. The animal soul has to do with the instincts, and the instinctual variants are, as I said before, they are equally powerful, if not more so, than the lands themselves. Just to understand, and how these work, and how they work in relationship, and what makes them, there's all kinds of things that to be explored and addressed. So holy ideas, the instinctual variants. The soul child is from Sandra Maitri, and spiritual dimension of the Enneagram, for those who are familiar. Fabulous, but you really have to have a pretty strong grasp of the Enneagram to get her work to the depth that she's writing. But the soul child is there's the missing piece in us that's really, really important in terms of integration in the soul child, soul child work. And then there's the personality, just bazillion things that, to be addressed, because the personality is made of everything that we think and we feel, and who we think we are, what we feel, what we believe, our values, everything in our learned world is a part of the personality. And our fears and motivations and the passions and the fixations, all that stuff, right? It's all in this part, and a lot of that is working with different levels of unconscious beliefs, really. Unconscious motivations, unconscious beliefs, and striving to make those more conscious. And then in the superego arena, I understand, or I took a workshop with Ruts Hudson on psychic structures, which are really fascinating because each of the 9 lands have a different kind of openness to others, to self, to the unconscious, to the conscious. So all of that is really powerful in understanding the power of the superego and how to work with it. So mostly, the vision would be to create conscious community of people who are interested in exploring your own development, and coming from your own experience and not from a model and trying to apply it, but moving from the inside and then using what's helpful, seeing what you do. So any questions, any comments? Yeah.
Are you saying that in the personality sphere, if you want to call it that there are 9 differences?
Well, in the psyche, there are 9 there are 9 lands, in essential lands. But in the personality, oh my goodness, you have millions of facets to personality. So personality would be everything that I am, that I think I am, in a sense. And that's different for every person.
But those 9 things that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
You say that those are in the sphere, in this diagram, that is represented by the personality.
No. For me, that all the way through this, all the way through is the 9 styles. You have 9 styles. It's 9-fold reality.
They penetrate.
Yes, all the way down to the essence.
The personality to the essence.
Yes. Yes.
Going through all those spheres.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that we would like to get back to the essence and the animal soul of ourselves. And what age does that include? Like, birth is probably essence, and then you go to evolve to animal souls. Or
They talk about a loss of connection with. that in the teachings of Almas, they talk about the loss of connection with being. And that happens through our process of conditioning and through our experience. Yeah.
And that's the idea, is to get back to that soul, child, animal, soul, essence, get back to the connection with being.
Yeah, well, it's really to integrate and let essence grow. Let the qualities of the most essential part of us grow. Through through, in a way, it's through working with things that are like working with reactions, and you can learn how to work with the reactions so that it doesn't take you, in life. And then there's awareness that's beneath that. And so you work with energies, you work with experience, you work to become more and more open to deeper levels.
And would you say that it's perhaps at some point you decide that I'm not any of these things that I think I am, and this is who I really am. This is my connectedness with beauty.
Yeah.
And one more question, I'll be quiet.
No, you don't have to be quiet.
Do you do anything with introversion and extroversion? I mean, there are different types.
That's more Jungian.
What's that?
That's more Jungian.
Yes.
In his typology, the introvert, the extrovert, the
Do you
sensate.
integrate that into your work? Or do you see it as being important?
Well, I think that it's a part. Well, for example, there are 3 types that are withdrawn, more withdrawn types, and there are 3 types that are more compliant, and there are 3 types that are more assertive. So, it's in the teachings, yes.
Yeah, I could see the 8, 9, and 1s perhaps as being more extroverted.
No, actually, a 9 is much more of a withdrawn. Actually,
Yeah.
they're more inner, yeah.
Okay.
And 9s and 4s and 5s.
9s and 4s and 5s.
So yeah, that's a whole. So if you dab, you just touch the surface of any topic, and there's a whole teaching. I mean, that's what's hard about the Enneagram. I mean, there's so much in it, and its beauty is that it just keeps unfolding. And every piece is a piece. So that's one way to find your style, in a way, is to take one piece and then just see exactly how you do that thing, and then that's a clue. So I had an exercise. Yes, I'm just checking, but I have an exercise for us too that
Maybe
will
an
be
exercise
helpful.
would be better. I have like a personal question as you go through personality and you move towards the soul child. As a 7, I think I move towards 5 as a soul child, and as I move in, get more to my instinct. I think it's going to be a personal question, but as you move through, and I'm assuming that you just keep getting deeper into, I don't really, instinctual as opposed to the I want and my soul child. Does your evolution move to centering so that the issues, like right now, it's not that I don't have personality issues, but the focus of my soul, my awareness, is much more somewhere between soul, child, and instinct, and I don't have the drives of a 7, and I feel much more like a 5, and I'm going through a lot of detachment, and everything's falling away, and I'm like really in a new land.
Yeah.
And nothing's wrong, it's very disorienting. There's no personality to grasp into.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm kind of curious how you work with that, but I think this might be a personal question, but anything you can say about that?
Well, I just think that I guess what I would reflect is the perfection, that as you just are honoring, and your process has brought you from like the land of 7 into quieter and more inward. I mean, that you can just follow it and it'll lead you there. It's not like you want to move to 5, It's more of the natural progression of how, letting go of things that aren't important, then somehow you end up in this place that does feel disorienting and does feel, it will be not familiar. See, that's the whole not familiar thing. And often the superego just wants to put us back together so we feel like ourselves, you know. I want to feel like myself again, and this is not it, you know. Or, you know, the unknown. The unknown is a very good sign. And then often there can be the essence of the fear, you know, that is at the bottom. It can be quite felt. That arises
The last part.
organically.
Would you naturally go like this law of manifestation 7582401? Would that reintegration go through those as well? Like, does that go from 7 to 5? Well, ultimately, as I move in, I don't want to get a concept, but I'm curious.
Don't get a concept, yeah.
Okay, good.
Just see what happens. You know, see what happens. Be curious.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Like a
concepts
de-evolve.
don't help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
doesn't de-evolve that way. Never mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't worry. Thank you.
I won't tell you. Good. So I thought for those of you who don't know your land, and also just for darn curiosity, you know, just for like heck, we should do an exercise, and then talk a little bit, you know, about it. So what I thought is just to take a couple of minutes, and you have your little piece of paper, right? So, and this I just want you to take a minute, maybe two, and go inside and make any notes that you would make about where you are in yourself and what you notice about yourself in this time. You're not going to share any of it, right? But where are you? Are you more, it's like noticing what you're noticing. Just sitting with your awareness and seeing what comes up for you. And I know that's a nebulous direction, and that's okay. Just being right here and now, and notice what's up for you.
What are we doing?
We are noticing what you are noticing. You are going into awareness just to see what's happening. Where are you? Are you in me? Are you in you? Are you in your belly? Are your concerns about your body? Are they about what you're feeling? Are you in a memory? Are you in your mind? Where are you right now? Just noticing. And anything you notice, just making some words. You're not going to share. You're not going to share this. It's not going to be. So anything you notice, feeling, sensation, thought. Noticing what you notice. It's the path of awareness, where all experience reveals. So I want you to write at least 3 words for just curiosity's sake. She made a demand, if you will. And then I just want to explore this with you, because one of the primary helpful ways to find your land, or if you're helping other people, you know, just giving them a place to start, is each land has a habitual focus of attention. It's where your attention just kind of goes. And it's very helpful, because if you, I was going to give you each one of these, so you can take this home. You want to pass? Oh, I'm hooked up. If you just if you'll pass those around, and you can take them. Huh? I'm on a short leash. Yeah. So. Because these, you can work with this, and you can make it your little game, in a sense. Like, where am I right now? What am I noticing? And then just see. The different lands have a different way of orienting. So, for example, in the land of 1, If you're a 1, you pretty much habitually orient to what is wrong, what's like error. Like, for example, a 1 might be driven crazy by these pictures. They're all crooked. So they'd be in the room, and it would be as simple as that. Like, something's out of whack. It's what's wrong, or it's what's missing, or it's what's out of alignment, and that's what they see. You could have all these things that were in alignment, but the 1 is going to be oriented into how to get the thing that's out of alignment in alignment. Does that make sense? And that's a habit of attention. And in the land of 2, it's some orientation to other people's needs. You just have a radar. They'll know that you need a cup of coffee before you know it. I mean, they know, and it's often very, there's empathy there. I mean, it's often some real to that for sure. But the orientation to somebody else's need, that would be a habit in the land of 2. Okay? Land of 3, you're going to have tasks and goals. They're going to be lists. Now, a lot of us are trained as 3s because, in the land of America, you're going to have, everything is getting things done and what it looks like and achieving, and we got so much to do, and we have to do the tasks and goals. But it's different than lists, actually. Tasks and goals is more like, I'm going there. And those tasks and goals are what, there's an orientation. In the land of 4, there's a sense of longing. What's missing for happiness? What's missing? Everything might, and often it's a longing in the heart, and also it's not envy exactly, but it's noticing other people have happiness, but you don't. Like, what's missing? How come? What's missing? That kind of sense to it. In the land of 5, it's a habit to detach. Detaching to observe. So, moving away from, moving away to see what's happening, figure it out, get to know what you know, so like that, detaching. In the land of 6, it's hypervigilance. It's a sense of what might go wrong, worst case thinking, what might go wrong, and we better prepare. And if we're going to the mountains, we better take 15, our pack with everything in it, just in case this happens or that happens. It's a hypervigilance. In the land of 7, it's more of positive spin. Things turn, and it's best case thinking. Well, it didn't work out, but the next time maybe it will, and it's a reorienting and a rationalizing and a reframing so that things have a positive spin. Okay, and then the land of 8, it's more moving in to take control and a sense of where the power is. And I will say also, well, for some reason, in the land of 6, it's also the questioning thing too. Questioning. But the orientation, no, worst case, best case, and moving in to take control. And then in the land of 9, it's other people's agendas. So I don't really have an agenda. So what's your agenda? Let's do that. In a sense, it's like merging with other people's energies.
Is that more about people pleasing then?
Or
do they really not have an agenda?
No, really don't have an agenda. Okay. It's a strategy. Yeah, don't have one. It's so much easier not to have an agenda. I mean, for a 9, a spiritual growth of a 9 is to have something to fight for and be willing to do it. Because in general, it's like, what does it matter? What's the point? Like, if I do this, what's the point?
Sounds a little like the 5.
No, 5s are much more in their mind, detaching to observe information, knowing I can figure it out. A 5 trusts their mind to figure everything out. It's a mind type.
Do they have an agenda?
A 5? Oh, of course. Everybody has an agenda but a 9. Everybody. That's one of the shocking things, is to realize the whole world has an agenda but you. Anyway, so.
Isn't that an agenda in itself? The no agenda?
It is. It is a
There you go.
strategy. It is
You're
a
a 9
strategy.
and you have an agenda.
I have been working a long time. A long, long time. Yeah, no, it's a strategy. So I'm curious how your lists and, I'm just curious if there's like any, just curious. And this is something to work with and share, and you have a question or a comment.
No, I do caregiving every morning, and I have a lady
You're a
who
2.
is a 9, and I don't think of people in boxes like this, but I keep
Honey, the whole night I've been saying that's not what we're doing.
Well, I don't think of her when this
Yeah,
is.
no,
but
that's
I
good.
just encourage her to stand up for herself, because it's so obvious, as I'm sitting here tonight, that she's never had an agenda, or she's never stood up for herself. And so I encourage her to do this, what would you like? What do you think? Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah,
And
it's
she
helpful.
loves it.
Yeah, helpful. But the thing is, it's not all that innocent, because 9s they have a passive aggressive thing too.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
know.
so it's not,
I know.
just hoo-hoo,
Yeah, I
it's
know.
not so like that.
I saw that too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you have a question? I thought you raised your hand. No. Okay, thought somebody did. So any comments or yes?
I'm just, from a very simplistic standpoint, my feeling is that all these lands are ways of being, and that they're not necessarily improper in and of themselves. It's a
No.
question of extremity, of
Right.
being extreme.
Exactly.
So it's like anything in life, you could say everything in moderation to some degree. So it's at that point when you're moving towards excess that there may be an issue or.
Right, exactly. Yep. Yeah, no. The tricky business with the Enneagram or anything, the Enneagram is not the end all, because there's many other dimensions to explore. But what it does is it's so specific in the thing that it is, because it does awaken a certain thing that without awakening to that, it's very hard to evolve beyond a certain point.
That was actually my next thought, which is if in the course of natural conscious growth,
Yes.
one can evolve.
Yes.
Does one need the Enneagram to do that? So in essence, if one is a conscious being and is growing in many different ways and has consciousness in terms of what they're doing in their life and what they're doing in their presence and their self and in relationship with others, then I'm just
Right,
trying to
right.
understand the parallels.
Hey, we are intelligent beings and we evolve anyway. So that's why they say to ask when you're 20, That's why they say in the books, or that somebody made the comment that you want to look early in your life to find out, to explore, not necessarily now, because you've had all your life to journey and grow in intelligence and balance, and we learn and we balance and we, all of these things happen quite naturally. So all of that is a given, and it's understanding this level and working with oneself on this level. It's catapults the evolution, because you're dealing directly with unconscious core motivations and unconscious frames, and all of that is what it reveals. So then you go, oh my God, I've only seen it this way. And so that's what it does, and that's what it's designed to do, because that's what opens the doors. You talk about the typing and putting things in a small box. This is about finding where you are so you can open it and become more, if that makes sense. It's not, so it's just hard because it names things that are not so pleasant sometimes to see. And that's hard, because people want to be in their true nature, and they want to be in oneness, and they want to be in, one with God and in our being, and, all of these things, which is truth, and that's totally great. And it's hard to get there without dealing with the shadow piece of ourselves, and that's what this names.
Kristen, what you have the typing typing consultation? What does?
Well, that means
no, that
yeah.
part I understand.
Okay.
I got that. It's the land consultation.
Yeah.
But what does that consist of?
Uh,
What do you do because I could see where we can think or believe that we're one of these numbers, or maybe two, and not sure, or whatever. What is it you do in your consultation to you know, like?
Well, I have a little thing. I have a model, but I don't follow that often. I mean, usually you'd have to come from a real wish to really, really get it, and then work in some way. And then it would become evident, usually, in that process of working.
Did you come to knowing that you're a 9? Was that something that you discovered on your own, or did someone
I
outside
learned
you?
from a teacher. I mean, no, someone outside me did not. No, I got it. But it was in teachings like this. It was not in books. I took teachings,
Right.
and then I got it. But that's, yeah, it was huge, yeah. Yes.
There are a lot of books,
Uh-huh.
a lot of teachings and theories using the Enneagram. Are there any other Enneagram theories that you are aware of that people use?
Well, there's Enneagrams of all sorts. There's Enneagrams, like I said, you could have an Enneagram of human transformation, you can have an Enneagram of the process of baking a cake, or you can have the Enneagram for anything that's in
No, I'm
like
talking
that.
about entire theories of development and the human model of existence, the transformation and evolution
Of human beings, you mean?
of human consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That is different than this theory, because like I said, there are a lot of books, a lot
Right,
of theories,
right.
and a lot of teachings
Right.
and teachers that
But see, but the amazing thing is they all fall in the Enneagram. I mean, that's what's so interesting is like all the other, like, you know, Jung, he was a 9. I mean, you got all the people and they come from their lands and they bring the teachings from, so that's why, so I don't know of any that's as comprehensive because every teaching comes from a land. And so it's a part of the whole of it, and that's,
Well,
and I don't know of any other.
Well, maybe I think that you're presenting here that the Enneagram is used to have an objective view of the human condition.
It's subjective,
But
yeah.
the Enneagram might, under other models, do the same thing, but just be different. Like, you know, maybe a parallel universe using
Mm-hmm.
the Enneagram and be just as effective at accomplishing the same thing, but be different than what you're presenting.
Yeah.
Is that possible is the question.
Anything's possible. Anything's possible. Yeah.
Different books.
Yeah,
on
and
the Enneagram are
you know what's
emphasizing
cool?
different things.
That's right. That's what's really cool about the Enneagram too, is that it doesn't come from one human being, right? I mean, every single person who has experience, and then they teach, and then they learn, and then they share, and then they are, and then, you know, it goes in and out, and it becomes more and more complex and more intelligent and more of a transmission the longer it's real. I mean, it's real because it's lived. It's not through beings and
I
yeah,
guess you
like
could
that.
sum it up
Mhm.
in these terms, that a lot of people
Are we gonna
that
do the
use a
meditation?
particular method, like this particular method that you present, which is quite wonderful and certainly suitable for people, but a lot of people, they have these things and they have an attitude of it's my way or the highway, if you get my drift.
Yeah.
That's why I present the ideas that maybe there is
Yeah.
the use of the same or similar tools and something can be achieved.
Yeah.
And are you open to that? Is the
I'm
question.
totally open.
Great.
I'm looking for essence and
You have
intelligence.
no agenda.
Yeah, no, whatever's real, you know, essence and intelligence of things. That's what it's all
Are
about.
we gonna do the meditation, or is it too
Nope,
late?
it's
And if
too late.
If it's too late, can you just tell us what it would have consisted of?
No.
No? Right.
Thank you so much for coming, all of you. Yeah, thank you.
RVML Resource Center is a volunteer-operated federal 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization. RVML is dedicated to providing easy access to a comprehensive collection of information on a variety of metaphysical, spiritual, and personal development subjects. RVML accepts and appreciates all donations. Material and monetary contributions are fully tax-deductible. This recording is not copyrighted, and permission is granted to broadcast, exhibit, or duplicate all or part of this program for non-commercial educational purposes. This live presentation was organized and presented by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. For more information, please visit rvml.org.